It would seem as though.
Hi. It's me.
Oh, it is you.
I'm back.
Oh my God, who would have expected? We're on location today.
Yes.
We are not in our usual spot.
North Portland.
I know we have left our glorious recording studio.
Our brand new.
Which means that there won't be a cat trying to claw my ass. So
Not today.
That'll be nice.
Not today.
Welcome to another week of It Would Seem As Though, the podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and nothing.
Mostly nothing.
Mm.
Oh, what do you want me to say?
I'm Vesta. I thought that I do that
sick
first.
of your shit. I don't know.
That makes sense.
I'm not Vesta. I'm Annika.
And sick of my shit.
And usually.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and today, we have a special guest.
We do have a special guest. We have a local artist, singer, songwriter, author, amazing.
XYZ.
Yeah, I know.
All the things.
Amazing.
The house
queer
down
woman.
boots. You know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Virginia Black.
Woo!
I didn't bring my sound machine.
I know.
I left it in Miami.
The crowd goes wild.
You didn't include lover of math.
It's because we don't talk about embarrassing things. We do a lot of the time.
Yeah, we do. So I've known you for 30 years?
Do we want to talk about how long we've known each other? That seems.
I'm not saying we should bring up secrets or shit, because if anybody knows some stuff about me that I don't want getting out, it would be you.
I take
Well,
cash,
and this one,
No.
but
check, Venmo. You can pay for my silence in a number of ways.
so when I first met you, of course, I just knew you as a singer. I knew you were a singer,
Sanger.
a sanger,
Singer.
and a genius mathematician.
Thank you.
Right? And perpetual college student. But then...
Rude.
I know, but now she's an author. A published author.
Oh,
and so
and
we're
you-
going to talk about that. But
Yeah.
first, we're going to talk about some kind of shit that's going on in the world.
Which is so great. The world doing great.
The world is fucked.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about two proposed bills that both make me want to kill people.
Yeah, I get that.
Well, the one you brought to my attention was this proposed bill in Missouri that would make teachers register as sex offenders if found supporting transgender students who socially transition.
Which means using the name they've chosen, using proper pronouns, anything.
Or giving them any literature that is about transition.
Yeah.
They would have to register as a sex offender.
It's a felony charge. If it passes, it would be
If
a
it
felony
passes,
charge. Yeah.
yes. And it's like, first of all, what is wrong with you, Missouri? Who hurt you?
Yeah. Who did
It says a newly proposed law in Missouri could charge teachers and counselors with a felony and require them to register as sex offenders if they're found guilty of supporting transgender students who are socially transitioning. Now, mind you, when talking to medical professionals, the American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry have all said gender-affirming care, like social transitioning, is clinically appropriate for children and adults.
Crazy.
I know.
But no.
But
let's
this
listen to
senator,
lawmakers.
this asshole senator, knows more. You know.
I think it's more important to listen to lawmakers than it is to doctors. Lawmakers have a bachelor's degree. What do you mean? Doctors went to school.
Do they even have to have a bachelor's degree?
I don't think so. Do you?
I mean,
I'm unsure.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is now...
Well, I'm pretty sure she has a bachelor's degree, though.
I think.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
In idiocy.
You know?
She has a bachelor's degree.
You know, there's
in
all
what?
types of degrees you can get nowadays.
Yeah, so the state rep, Jamie Gregg, Republican, shock.
What?
Who would have thought that? Is the one who is trying to get this signed into law. And his own brother is like, dude, no, this is a mess.
Yeah.
You know.
But anyway.
You know, we're on... Well, you can't just shake your head.
Well,
they can't hear you shaking
not that.
your head.
It's not that. Like, one of the challenges I find, particularly when discussing current events and the current climate of I don't know what, is finding the right ways to express not just my disgust or my disbelief, but not go into an extended rant on how all of this is an extension of divisive policies meant to distract us from our capitalist overlords. It's meant to distract us from the real items in the world,
Agreed.
the real issues in the world,
Agreed.
that affect 97, 98, 99, dare I say it, percent of the population.
Right.
Because once we all discover and admit and further act on the fact that we all have more in common than we don't, those guys are... Wait, which expletives can we use in this?
Literally all of
Those
them.
guys are fucked.
Yeah.
And once people realize that truly the power rests in our individual, in our communities, and that if we support our communities instead of supporting those corporations, once again, they are fucked. And also all of them have a time limit. And what happens is that they're just moving dark money from this corporation to that corporation to this corporation, pick a decade. So I listen to bullshit like this particular proposed bill, and see it for the greater... I mean, never mind that on the ground it's utter bullshit, and it causes absolutely more harm than any even tiny bit of good. I look at the big picture, and all of it just, makes me angry, and I see. So I could either sit here and be quiet, or I could take over your podcast and rant for half an hour.
No, because I'll shut you up. But
Well, because this one also, because mine is more the emotional response to it, whereas hers is more the educated response to it, as is yours clearly. But
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I think that at some point it'll get to... it's not going to be where we can continue this. It's not sustainable. The United States as is. And at some point, the people will have to realize. And we talked about this the other day, where there's more people who study society and internal conflict within nations, and how a lot of them are like, if this continues as is, there will be a breakdown. and there will be potentially civil war, right? Maybe not civil war what we think of when we think about back in the day, but it's already very that. Remember when Donald Trump was president? It was already very that.
Yeah, it's already that.
Yeah,
because we've become a society that is us versus them.
Yeah,
and it's all is. And no, it's either you're either on that side or you're on that side, but there is no middle ground.
But
I would argue that has always been the case.
We've changed
that the key issues upon which that divisive platform exists, that's what changes from I grew up in the Reagan years.
Yeah.
Same conversations, family values. I grew up, and then I came of age, during the AIDS crisis.
Right.
The same thing. So it's always an us versus them, and sometimes the periphery of the us changes, and sometimes the periphery of the them changes, but the core of each side, I think, is the same, and it all comes back to the very same thing of, if we admitted how much we all have in common,
we wouldn't be here. But the us versus them, it's just the people who change. It's the groups that is the us or the them that change. Because we can think about bigger, think about slavery, right? Us versus them. That's just a huge macro example. But there's so many more examples that are minor in just shifting of allegiance, essentially.
Well, I know that, and we talked about this before when I was listening to Dr. Brene Brown. One of the things she says, which I completely agree with, is it's hard to hate people up close. So you get in the same room with people and have to actually talk to them, and not in a political setting, but you get up and have an actual conversation with people. You're going to find, like you said, that things you have in common, as opposed to, you're the enemy, so I have to hate you. Because once that's a human.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps I don't hate you as much as it's just, I think it adds a different spin to it.
That freaks me out about American politics, is that, the conservatives versus the liberals, and they don't seem to align on anything. How does that make sense?
Right. And it doesn't.
I don't understand how you all live in the same place and you don't agree on anything. That's very weird to me, right? And because it feels like distraction.
And I think that's my confusion with the us versus them kind of thinking, is because I feel like, whether this is correct or not, I feel like when I was younger, that there were things that the two different parties at least compromised on. It felt like there was some kind of compromise, where now it feels like you vote, it's all or nothing. And you can't change anything. It has to be 100% what I'm saying here or nothing.
I think there's also, and I'm not a student of this, although I find it interesting enough that someday when I slow down,
That's funny.
LOL.
and I have fewer things to do,
So deathbed.
fewer hobbies. I'd really like to look at the sort of cyclical nature of society and the waves of, like you look at the waves of conservatism, not just like conservatism the way we think of it in America as being, MAGA or red or, whatever.
Right.
But just a general conservative approach to whatever. And look at it through the lens of like the 1920s versus the 1930s, or the 1840s versus the 1870s, right? Or where we are now compared to where we were 10 years ago. And what those cycles are like. Like, judging things by the American political landscape is kind of like you're picking only one variable. I'm going to throw math in as much as possible. I just want you to know.
Get out of your own house.
You're just looking at it through one lens,
Yeah.
And I'm always curious about what are those other lenses to look at this stuff through.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, many years ago, I remember thinking...
In the 20th century?
Yeah. In the last century, because I'm from the 1900s. I remember thinking about...
Old ass.
Like, so the 1920s were a wild, wild time. I mean, with the bathtub gin and the bootleggers and the whatever and the dancing girls and all of the things where it was wild. And then it was like, too wild, rein it in. And instead of just reining it in, okay, let's calm this down a little bit, it swings all the way the other way.
Yeah.
To where it's like prohibition and that kind of shit, where it's like people with axes smashing people's,
Booze.
alcohol and whatever. It's like, and it goes to like missionaries, and it goes from cuckoo crazy to like, well, now we have to sew it all up and whatever. And I felt, and it's like, I noticed that because I am a child, I was born in the 60s, but I did most of my growing up in the 70s, and the 60s and 70s were kind of a wild time. Free love and all of the things, and and then the 80s came along, and it was like, well, look at what happened. Look at what happened from all this free love and nonsense. Now people are dying from a sexually transmitted disease, and this is why. Because y'all are sinners, and y'all have, poisoned the world with your horrible thinking, and got to get back to Jesus.
Sure.
And, box it all in again.
Which is paired with the financial collapse of the Rust Belt and the automotive industry and all of the changes. Like, again, multiple lenses, right? Come at it from different angles. And you look at things like you were talking about the 1920s and the 1930s, couple all of that reactionary business with the famine that hit in the Southwest, with everything that happened in the Dust Bowl, like all of that stuff.
Interconnected,
So I look at this bill. I mean, to circle back, and on the one hand, we need to make sure that we're supporting the agencies locally that are fighting it. That we encourage those folks on the ground to speak up for themselves and give them the tools and support that they need to do that. And fuck this guy, discredit him as much as possible. It's a ridiculous bill. I don't know what kind of support it's getting. I know it's getting a ridiculous amount of press.
Yes.
But that press, they're going to be starting about the irresponsibility of the media.
Yep.
But a lot of that press, I think, could be countered with supporting those news sources that are talking about the ridiculousness of the issue.
Well, right, but that's not sensational. No one's going to be like, and there's 10 people who are for this, there's 1,000 people against it, but we want to get this sensationalized story.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by the irresponsible journalism. But there is journalism out there that is focused on, journalistic integrity, on credible sources, on not leaning towards the preposterous for clickbait and actually getting real information out to people.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is clickbait.
24-hour news cycle, clickbait, it's all too much. And I think people's language, I don't think they realize how important the language that they use matters in regards to legislation, in regards to dealing with other people, right? Like, big example is calling every brown person who comes from this, south of the border an illegal, right? Like, that, no person's illegal, right? Like, change your language. And I think that's a huge issue, especially with the United States, because we are so divisive. You know, like one party learns a term and then uses that, beats that into submission, essentially. Like, you're an illegal, or you're a groomer, or whatever it is, right? Like we keep changing terms, but it's all still based in the same sort of discrimination.
All dog whistle BS.
Yep.
And we can't count on some of those news sources, because then we're back to the Washington Post is owned by Bezos, right? We're back to the New York Times suddenly being more focused on opinion pieces. Right. And all of those things, in order for them to do any tiny bit of valid news, well, they've got to make money, because they have to show a profit, because they are owned by corporations that are more interested in the bottom line than making sure that the people who they don't want talking to each other get the truth.
Right.
So,
Yep. Capitalism, globalization.
Okay, I have to do a little side note here. It just made me think of this the other night. So we're listening to the hits of 1985 because Grace wanted to say, let's play something on the Alexa. I was like, okay. So I picked that. One of the songs that came on, which I've never heard before, and it was like, this was a hit in 1985, was, I don't know the name of the song. I think it was called Illegal Alien.
it was.
By
It's
Genesis.
No Fun Being an Illegal Alien was very popular on MTV.
Being sung by a white man.
Yeah.
I'm like, so Phil Collins, you know what it's like to be an illegal alien?
I think he was trying very hard to shed some light on it, but doing it in a way that was not helpful at all, and also his fake Mexican accent was problematic.
Yeah, all those things. So
Don't watch the video.
I won't.
I will not either, and I had never heard it before.
I'm already mad at the world. We're all burn shit down.
Right.
Arson is my
Well, so
favorite
the other bill that I
action.
wanted to just touch on was the Oklahoma anti-abortion bill, which the concern to me is that it makes all abortions except ones where the mother could die illegal. It doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the circumstance. It makes them all illegal. Second point is it then puts everyone who has an abortion
on a registry.
Ugh. Which, anything you're doing where you're putting people on a registry where it's like your little enemies list, whatever, it's like, that terrifies me.
Yeah.
Well, it's totalitarianism, and it's leading towards an authoritarian. Yes, that's the word I'm trying to say. I only had one cup of coffee today. And it's daylight savings week.
I asked, did you want coffee when we stopped at Starbucks?
No, I only get one cup a day, but it's daylight savings week, which means language is hard.
Okay.
But it's leading towards that state where, we're all, it's surveillance state. We're all going to snitch on each other. We're all going to keep an eye on each other, because as long as we're doing that, then we're not talking about how to rebel.
Right.
But let me tell you something there, and I talk about this often, is I am like massively in love with the younger generations, because I mean, just a few years ago during like BLM protests, I'm sorry, I saw little white children throw their entire body into cops and get body slammed and get bit the fuck back up. Do you know what I mean? Like, not saying that like, oh, we should, the children of the future, I'm not Whitney Houston, but what I am going to say is that I think that they're doing a lot more, because I feel like they can, I don't know, do they sense it in the weather or the animals? I'm not sure. But more so than even like millennials, right? Like, I'm a millennial and I'm very fucking outspoken, but millennials are now raising Gen Zers, and we're instilling, right, like true humanity kind of values into the youth. And I think them going into the streets and them fighting, and they're natives to the internet, right? So that's why like they're trying to ban TikTok. They're trying to like ban all this shit. Granted, they're like Chinese spyware, whatever. But like, information is also being disseminated rapidly. Right?
Right.
People are learning more.
I will say that their bullshit meters are... So, you both know, I have a 16-year-old. Her bullshit meter is... Her bullshit detector is very well installed.
Yeah.
And she also has a completely different and more educated stance on gender politics, on some aspects of feminism, on, again, with capitalism, again, with, you know, some of these other things. I mean, this is, during the early pandemic, one of the ways that we could spend time with her, we thought it'd be fun to go back and watch old 80s movies, old 90s movies. Just, we'd drop references of something that was like The Breakfast Club, which was, all those references are ubiquitous, right? Or
problematic movies.
Yeah, right. And one of the films that we put on was Ferris Bueller, right?
Okay.
And we are 10 minutes into the film when she like reaches over and pauses and says, "Why does everybody like him? This guy is an asshole."
Yeah.
I never liked it for that exact reason. I was like, this guy's just trying to get everyone into his trouble.
Right.
Which I was like, I don't find that funny.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there are aspects of kids coming up and being exposed to technologies right away, and I mean some of the things that we did with some of the technologies when we were coming up. We invented the internet. You're welcome. But I think
I was personally responsible.
I know, girl. All that math. You're so good.
Someone had to help Al. So that's Al Gore for you youngsters out there.
Right, because he invented the internet.
He did.
I think that there is more of an awareness of some of these issues. I hesitate to say that they won't come down in the same divisions that all generations do. I think it takes time for those to show up. But I'm not. I find it encouraging. I think.
At least it's the only hopeful thing I can see in this world currently, to be honest. Like, everything makes me want to burn everything down. Like, I just feel like, let's just start over. You know what I mean? Or not. But seeing, I don't know, again, about gender politics, about the environment, about capitalism, about literally everything, they're just much smarter and more vocal about, and they're not much younger than me, but still, I would never. Even, at that age, I would have never.
I saw Molly Ringwald the other day doing an interview.
Did you? How is she?
She's good. She's good. Yeah. But she her kids wanted to watch her movies with her.
Oh.
And so they watched The Breakfast Club.
Oh, Lord.
And her girls, at the end of it, were like, that was messed up. That guy's like sexually harassing you through the entire movie, and at the end you get with him? It's like, what the hell? And they were horrified by that. And she was so happy that they were horrified by that. Yeah. It's like, different time, because that was the 80s, and we looked at that like it wasn't so horrible.
Problematic at all.
And it's like, but you look at those movies, I can't even watch a lot of the movies that I mean, like, the movie 16 Candles. When I watched it initially, I found it problematic. But as the years go on, it's like, oh my God, I can't even look at this movie because there's so many horrific things in it that are like super racist and sexist. And the fact that you're like, here, you do me this favor and I'll give you my drunk girlfriend, but you can do whatever you want with her. It's like, it's like, that is so gross to me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad that young people can look at this stuff and go, what's wrong with you? Why is this okay in your time? It's like, it wasn't, but we were dumb. We're dumb people. Yeah. We were young and we're like...
Yeah, for a lot of it. Well, not a lot of it, but for some of it, we knew. We just didn't know how to talk about it because we didn't talk about it then.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that you hear people saying now is like, if I knew then... Well, you did. You did, but you chose to ignore it. You knew then, when you made this movie about this problematic thing, you knew it was wrong. But you did it anyway because you're like, I'm going to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
It's like Marta Kaufman saying that about Friends when she's cast an all-white cast. She's like, well, if I knew then... But you did. You grew up in New York
City?
You knew that New York was not all white.
Oh.
So you did know then.
Yep.
You just chose to go with this thing that you knew would make money.
Hit.
Yeah,
Yep.
and, make you be this cash cow,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's also an important thing for us to be like, more responsible for that, not like, well, if I didn't... You did know.
You did know.
You did know. You knew that making that racist joke was wrong. You knew that making, your sexist in it was wrong. You knew it, but you chose to go, well, but I've gotten away with it, so why not? But those were my two things I wanted to talk about.
I have nothing.
You have nothing?
No, because it's the same old shit, and I bring it up all the time, so...
Right. All right.
Continue.
Well, then the reason we're here... on the road.
It's to talk trash.
After that light intro.
Yeah,
but
so sorry.
Sometimes our intro is like, what'd you do this week? And it's like, nothing.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, the world's on fire. Let's talk about that. And then we talk about something.
There's a lot of the world being on fire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
True.
But, okay, so I want to talk about you.
Oh my God.
Miss Virginia Black.
Oh my God.
And your writing. So you have published, and correct me if I'm wrong, a novella and 2 novels.
There was a novella, then that got pulled, and it's on my long list of things that might ultimately become a novel, because some people told me that, that could be a novel. So...
Oh, so you ruined everything.
Well, I did. But I also
Pretty
told you
sure.
it could be a Lifetime movie.
It could be a lifetime.
Don't listen
movie.
to her for advice.
That's accurate. It could be a perfect contemporary romance.
Well, and that was one of the things I loved about it, because I read it, I gobbled it up, and it was so great, and I don't remember the name of it. Remind me the name.
It was called Big City Blues.
Big City Blues, a little lesbian love story.
Girl,
Loved it. And it was all lesbians. I didn't know that was a thing.
Ew, lesbians! Get out!
It's contagious.
Next,
Right.
she's going to tell you that she wants it to be made into a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Oh, I already told her that.
Oh.
Because I said, when I make it into a Lifetime movie, I said, but it should be a Christmas movie. Because it would be the perfect... But she agreed with me.
But in July.
Yeah.
Also, there's only one bed in this whole inn.
Oh, God. I'm leaving.
Right. But
Listen,
was that your first published
That was my
work?
first published work. It was self-published, and then after that, I wrote a little bit of fan fiction. I still do that from time to time. We'll get into that.
Ooh.
And then I had, let's say, 4 different short stories that were published in different anthologies.
Okay.
Over a few years, and then my first novel, Consecrated Ground, was published in 2023, and my latest novel, which has only been out for like 6 or 7 weeks and feels like it's been out forever, and also just came out yesterday, is No Shelter But the Stars, and both of those are from Bywater Books.
Okay.
Well, the first one... so I know that we've talked about this, like how you categorize, because for me, not being an author, when I talk about your books, which I do, I refer to them as kind of lesbian science fiction fantasy.
Yeah, the genre question is interesting.
Although I usually just say queer.
It's just softcore porn. No.
A little bit.
That's the fan fiction. So, with plot, though, I'm very, very specific about plot. So, the genre conversation is an interesting one, and it's one that I can get away with blending genre because I have a publisher that is very supportive, and I feel as if I am writing in a niche within a genre within another genre.
Okay.
Most people don't care about this. Most people want, is it a good book? Does it not suck?
Yeah.
Great. It seems interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try it. But there are folks who really do read only along genre lines. Like some folks who only read Stephen King and Joe Abercrombie, or some folks who only read romance, and some folks who only read mysteries or whatever. I've always been all over the place. And I can't pick just one thing. Consecrated Ground is definitely a lesbian romance, sapphic romance, what they're calling it now, because that ebbs and flows.
And that sounds fancy.
It is
Sapphic
fancy.
romance.
Sapphic.
Based off Sappho.
I know. Yeah.
But it's also, some would call it paranormal, some would call it urban fantasy. I think of it as urban fantasy because I used to read a lot of urban fantasy. That was the thing I was really into. No Shelter But the Stars is also lesbian fiction, romance, but it's science fiction because that is my first love, as you know.
Nerd. Fucking
Well,
nerd.
I mean,
Huge
considering
nerd.
it starts out with spaceships and a battle
and
on
Captain
spaceships.
Kirk or something. No, I'm just kidding.
Captain Kirk is not in it, but
Kirk is
I
not
mean,
in
literally,
it.
the first page is
It's a space battle.
It's a space battle.
Starts
Of
with
course
this.
It's now I haven't gotten very far in that one. I've only read the first.
What are you
chapter.
even doing with your life? Come on.
I
Oh.
know.
Yeah, but-
I have nothing to do with my life, so I just sit around watching Golden Girl reruns. But
Oh.
Okay, that actually would track.
that tracks.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other thing that I now have a TV babysitter for my mother, and so I put on Golden Girls in the morning and kind of let it entertain her through the day.
Okay, but who's doing the babysitting? Like, is it like Rose or is it Sophia? Like, who's doing the actual babysitting?
Well, honestly, it's mostly her staring into space and being not cognizant of most
While
of what's
holding a
happening.
book. Yeah.
While holding
Yeah,
a
yeah,
book. But I have started reading it. But let's talk about your first one first, though.
Oh, sure.
Because
First.
your first one is, I found interesting because, it's like, I remember you saying, initially, I'm going to back up just a little bit. I remember when you did your first one, Big City Blues, your novella, that you were like, I don't know that I want you to read this. Because there's sex scenes and it's probably going to be embarrassing. And I fucking loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't know women had sex. I didn't know.
Oh, with each other?
With each other. Isn't that crazy?
I can hear this.
There's a scissoring joke in here somewhere. I'm just going to let it go.
Between us? No, I don't think we can talk about that.
I don't think there is. But I know that initially there was some, like, hesitation to let friends and family read your stuff because there were sex scenes.
Yeah, and part of it was sex scenes. Part of it, I think, was my creative pursuits, in a lot of ways, were a personal thing.
Yeah. Very vulnerable.
It took kind of, yeah. And it took a while, for example, for me to. I always sang in front of people. I could always perform in front of people, but songwriting was hard, and it's only gotten harder. Mm-hmm. By the time I got used to that, I took care of, the growing pains of that before I met you, before I met many people, because that was, back when I was much, much younger. And Big City Blues was about when I started really writing. And just putting it out in the world at all was a big deal. And putting it out in the world and then having people I knew read it was a big jump. And getting used to writing, and it's not like the things that I write are just full of sex. I mean, there's
told you, it's literally just softcore part. Yeah.
But it took me a while to get comfortable with not just having people read those scenes, with writing those scenes, with writing anything, and and considering how often you and I speak. You were really early days in some of that. So
I was also really pushy.
Yeah, which totally fine. But and I understood that pushiness came out of, hey, I want to support this thing that you're doing. I want to know what's going on because you're a nice person no matter what you tell people. Yes, your husband.
She's outed me right there.
I don't believe a word of it.
Okay.
So.
Your husband paid me to say that. Okay, actually, he wouldn't pay me to say that.
Yeah. No, he would not.
I'll make up someone. My mother-in-law, quite frankly, is the same way. She's like, I don't care about that. You're doing this thing. I want to support this thing that you're doing, and I'm getting better about it. Like this one, compared to that first one, and compared to Consecrated Ground, this has more sex. And now I'm like, fine, whatever. I mean, you read it. If you don't like it, skip it. If that's not your thing, there's so much more to the story than that.
Well, I can only imagine putting your heart, your soul, what you think, how you feel, your experience into a novel, into characters, into their experience, and then the fear of potentially someone being like, what the fuck is this trash? You know what I mean? And maybe, like, you have to maybe expect some of that, right? Like, you can't put art in the world and expect, right? But I can't imagine being like, here's this published book and people are all, burn it,
having somebody tell you that your baby's ugly.
Yeah.
Because you've put your heart and soul into this thing, and you put it out in the world, and then it's just out there.
Yeah.
And that, I would imagine, is a super... Because I've been an entertainer always, but it's like, I entertain in the moment, and you like it or you don't, but it's over in like a few minutes or in a few hours or whatever. I'm not putting it out there to stay out there and having people go, what the fuck is she doing? And so the idea, I would think, to have someone go, that it's just sitting there and you can't control who reads it, who loves it, who hates it, who whatever.
You caught me on a good day. There are days, I have to say, I could get, I can speak to this. 65 positive reviews and 3 that are like,
So lukewarm.
One was like, this is predictable and it sucks. The other one was like, this fact. Yeah, I thought that this book was going to be this, and it turns out it's not. And meh.
Are those the comments that stick with you?
Those are the ones that stick with me. The number of reviews that I've got, like, this is fucking fantastic. This is great. I can't wait until the next book comes out. This is what's good about this story. This is what's good about this story. I am invigorated by those things. I am supported by those things.
Yeah.
But I don't give them as much weight and rent in my head as I do those critical ones.
Right.
So when that first novel came out, the concern for me was, what if people think my writing sucks?
Well, sure.
And I mean, I wanted people to. I wasn't even invested in them reading it. I just wanted them to buy it so that my publisher made enough money to keep me writing books to say, yeah, okay, we want to see more of your work.
Right.
Which my publisher would absolutely shake their head out. They are way more interested in making sure that we all tell our stories. And fight book bans, quite frankly. But that initial, okay, by the time Consecrated Ground came out, I was a little bit better at, okay, you can read it, but you might want to skip this chapter. And this is the kind of story it is. Like, it was really important that my friends and family understood what kind of story this is and what kind of story it's not.
I think that's a good, like, but you know, think about a child. If you tell a child amazing things all the time, they're going to remember the shitty thing you did to them or the shitty thing you said to them, right? That's like the one thing they remember.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's...
But I think that's just human nature.
Oh, okay.
100 people can say, oh my God, you're beautiful.
Yeah.
But that one person was like, you wore that? That kind of makes you look fat. Yeah, that's the one that you're going to go, well, but you said I was
Well, I'm
fat.
never doing this again.
I have a friend, and it's actually a mutual friend, who one time in college told her she had thick thighs.
Good for
Now,
her.
I would have been all,
Thank you.
thank you. You know what I did? Thank you, girl. But that was, for the rest of her life, it's like, but my thighs. You know, it's like, so everything is good, but
your
one
thighs.
jackass one time told you,
Oh, sure.
you know, and so that's the one you remember.
Yeah.
And I get it. I do get it because it's human nature.
Yeah.
And again, you've put something out there that you can no longer, you have no control over it now. And so I
It's out
think,
there forever.
and you,
Till the
my
world
darling,
ends.
are a bit of a control freak.
I will slam that laptop shut.
Why? Because I told your truth?
Dare
You told her story. It was her story to tell.
Oh, I'm
How dare
sorry.
you.
I'm sorry. That is true.
So it was tough to let words be in the world. But I feel like I've gotten better. This last one, I will say. So the first one, look, and this is going to come out kind of weird, and I want, hopefully, that folks will hear the intent behind it. I worked very hard on that first novel. I wrote probably 5 different versions of that novel. I worked with 3 different editors on that novel. Each iteration working to make it better. Like, okay, how do I take this part and make this part better? And then in the next iteration, how do I take this part and make it better? And at the same time, I was studying the craft and learning more about writing.
Sure.
And so where I was at the inception of that book and where it was by the time it was published, you know, there were a lot of steps. I wrote the second book faster. And I did something a little bit different. I don't want to say that I held myself back in the first book, but I took fewer chances, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In this latest book, when people say blood, sweat, and tears, I left it all on the page. And so the nerves that I had before it came out were completely different. I mean, I was inconsolable. She will deny it. I cannot believe I am still married. I mean, I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, luckily, though, you have a pretty fantastic wife.
Oh, she's
alright. She's alright.
She's okay. Unfortunately, you're stuck with a woman who's smart and beautiful and kind.
all
Funny.
of the things.
Oh,
Yeah, all of the
Can we just
things.
keep listing things about your wife?
Honestly, we have. Well, we can because she's not here. She would make us stop
Yeah,
if
stop.
she were.
Right.
And change the subject. Sturdy Midwesterner that she is. I was. It was difficult until those first couple of reviews came in, and and it took forever before I let her read the first novel.
Wow.
Which is just a funny thing to say. Do you want me to read it? Actually, I would prefer if you didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wait. And then later, can I read it now? Yes, you can read it now. It took a while. This one I was a little bit better about that, but it's a different experience to really go there, particularly with something that's what other folks would consider genre fiction.
Yeah.
You know, with the supermarket stuff. You know,
Yeah.
this is my contribution to that genre, if you will. And to pour that much of myself into it was an interesting experience.
Well, because Consecrated Ground, your characters are not just normal people.
Mm-mm.
You have witches and vampires and, you know, it's like, you know, so I could also see how people go, wait a minute. So this is a romance, this is a whatever, and you have, you know, these kind of characters, which you would usually see in, like, you know, whatever. That
Like fantasy, horror, whatever. Yeah.
fantasy horror. Thank you. That was the genre I was trying to think of. So, was that also kind of a concern that people were like, what is with all this supernatural
You know,
shit?
I don't think so, but I'm not the right person to ask. So I'll say this. Let's step away from writing. Let's think about the movies we like, and let's pick those genres. So you've got your sci-fi or TV shows, right? You've got your sci-fi, you've got your horror, you've got your urban fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Buffy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's, you know, most folks who know who Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. Even in Buffy, who's doing nothing but slaying vampires all the time, and battling all kinds of evil.
Yep.
The parts that people found the most riveting are the romantic subplots.
Sure.
Angel.
Sure. Well, because it's the parts that are the most human that we can relate
Of
to.
course. So,
I mean, the good versus evil, always very important. You know, it's like she's getting rid of the evil, but, you know, whatever. Yeah.
I look at all of the sci-fi that I love. There's a romantic subplot. I mean, what's the point of being the hero if the hero doesn't get the girl? Right?
Yeah.
And never mind the problematic aspects of that are usually portrayed. Let's keep the positive ones, right?
I fucking hate.
Well, let's just think about Captain James T. Kirk.
I mean, you know, I hate the hero. The hero journey to me is so played out.
Okay, now, yes,
I hate
and
it.
completely different conversation.
Yeah,
and
I'm with you.
kind of like a hobby right now is, if I had time, studying story structure and how much it varies.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Marlon James, and we'll nerd out about that some other time.
Okay.
It won't involve math. I'm lying. There will be math.
I can't wait.
But
By the way, I think that should be the title of your autobiography. It should just be called There
There
Will
Will
Be
Be
Math.
Math.
Yeah, just kidding. There'll be math.
there will be math. So I want to tell those kinds of stories because those are the genres that I love. They
Yes.
give me those stories give me a great deal
Yeah.
of joy, but they always have some sort of a romantic plot. Okay, well, I read a lot of lesbian fiction because I am a romantic, and so anything I write is going to have that aspect of it. Now, the thing that I've made clear to folks is, okay, there are certain stories I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to tell coming out stories. I'm not going to talk about homophobia or racism for the most part in my stories. I'm not saying that those don't belong in stories. They absolutely do. There are people who tell those stories better. I am telling a story of when you people fucking figure your shit out, these are the kinds of stories that exist for us.
When society is
We
better.
love each other. This is what we do.
Yeah.
This is who we are. We are people of color. We are queer. Not all of my characters are all of those things, but most of them are.
Sure.
And I want to talk about those people getting on with their lives.
Yeah,
in
not
space,
just not
or,
just
you know.
about
Sure.
the racism and the homophobia and like the oppression that they feel or like
Right.
the discrimination they like that. Those stories are important, but those stories are also everywhere, and that's all they focus on is like black trauma or queer trauma. What about black excellence or what about queer people thriving? Like why write about it? I do
Right.
want to say something that I like that the novels don't have a specific genre. It's a type of like intersectionality, bringing in different types of viewpoints, bringing in different readers. You know, making it, you know, however you describe it, but you know, being, you know, if it's spooky or if it's, you know, more sci-fi or if it's a sapphic love story. I like that it is like a space western. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those kind of overlapping genres, I think are really interesting. And I think it gets real boring to stick to the same old of like, I'm Stephen King and I only write horror. You know what I mean?
And even he doesn't.
Yeah,
He blends different genres.
The Dark Tower.
Even he blends romantic elements into his stories.
Of course.
Right? So the thing that I get to do is I get to ride that line more visibly.
Sure.
I think that other folks need to stay in their lane, but they get to bring in some of these elements into their stories. Whereas, for now, at least, I'm very sure it's both sci-fi, romance, paranormal, urban fantasy, romance, and I've got a publisher that's willing to dance with me while I do that.
That's cool.
I know for me that, like, in reading a book or watching a movie, I'm going to be much more interested if there is some romantic element to it, because that's where the human connection, I feel, comes in. Because if it's just fighting, if it's just whatever, it's just one, the adventure. Yeah. It's like, well, that, to me, personally, that feels kind of like something's missing. I want to see that human, like, we're doing this really hard thing. We're fighting, we're trying to win the war, we're trying to do whatever for something. Yeah. Because if you're trying to, it's like you're trying to get back to the romance or get back to your family or whatever. It's like that. I love that element.
Well, and I think that most stories, I mean, we can even go back to the classics. Like the Odyssey is all about Odysseus getting back to his family. You know what I mean? Right. Star Wars, there's love. Lord of the Rings, there's love. Like, pick anything. There's going to be romance. Or at least the desire to have.
Yeah, I think. So the English. I told you, words are hard.
She's grunting at me.
I enjoy, I read, I embrace all kinds of stories, and some of them are flat. To use the TV example, some of them are Halo, right? Some of them are Aliens. Mm-hmm. Yes, I just want to watch people shoot some stuff and blow some shit up. Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. But those aren't the only stories I like, and I want those options in all of my entertainment. The stories that I write, most of the time, I write them because I can't find them somewhere.
Ooh, yeah.
I couldn't find a story like either of these, and so I wrote them.
I love that.
And that's probably not going to stop.
Yeah.
Well, good.
But that's like a beautiful motivation. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to be able to read something, but no one has written it, so you write it. I think that's cool.
Oh, no, it's a pain in the ass. The problem is that then I have to do the work. Like,
the work.
I want to read all the time and watch TV all the time.
Same.
And it's frustrating if I want to try and find a story and it doesn't exist, and then characters show up in my head, and then they start talking to me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I don't get any sleep until there's a playlist, and if there's a playlist, I'm doomed, and I have to write the book.
Oh my god. Life is hard.
Life is super hard.
Tell me more about your struggle.
Life is hard when you're an overachiever.
Oh, girl. We just had this conversation on the way here.
We were talking about that.
An overachiever. I'm not.
Wow. You just
so now you're a liar?
Bald-faced lied to us.
We gotta go.
You are one of the people, you and your wife, who are always busy. It's like, well, I'm working, but then I'm whitewater rafting, and then I'm climbing a mountain, and then I
have a conference out of state or whatever.
Well, it's always, and I realize whitewater rafting is not what she does. But I mean, you guys are always like, well, we just trekked across Alaska, but then it's like, what? It's like
we were part of the Iditarod,
right?
Spelunking.
It's always something.
Yeah.
It's always like, well,
I'm only laughing because I want to like discount anything that you just said.
But you can't.
All of those things are true. I mean, not the Iditarod. It was the Chilkoot Trail. But still, we did do all of those things. And I am going to a conference in New Orleans next week.
See?
I'm leaving. Predictable.
So I don't know, and I've never known, where you fit these extra hours in the day to do all of the shit that you do. It's like, when do you sleep?
I don't know how I do it either. I'm gonna be frank. I know that
because you also hold down a job.
Yes,
that is not writing.
That is not writing.
It's nothing.
It's not even. There's no mathing. I wish. I work in cybersecurity, but which is why I made the face when you said Chinese spyware on TikTok. Like that's true. Well, but
yeah,
I just do. It's weird. I decide that there's this thing I want to do, and I got to figure out a way to make it fit in, and so
ironclad drive. Like honestly, just drive. Dedication, right? Like, what else?
Well, and the odd thing is, and I know that you've heard me say this before, and I don't say this to be self-deprecating in any way.
Sure.
I don't. I think I don't do enough. I think that I could do more. I think there's other things that I could be doing. And so I get very... It's tough to have this conversation because, people are like, yeah, okay, whatever. And you are not the only ones. I have other friends who say the exact same thing.
You have other friends?
Shh. This is only it's only like 2 because I don't have a lot of time. So that was a joke. I don't know how to do things differently, and there's always something else that I want to be learning how to do. I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. That was we were having a conversation on the way here about how this one feels, has that feeling of almost worthlessness if she's not always overachieving. If she's not like, what's the next thing? Yeah, not me. Yeah. I'm an underachiever. I literally, I'm like, I can sit and watch TV all day. I don't care. It's like, I'm old now. I feel like those laurels that they always talk about not resting on, I have mine built up into a nice comfy cushion I'm going to rest on. Because it's like I don't feel the need to keep like topping myself or doing things. It's like I have a comfortable life where, it's like me and my husband, my children, my job, whatever. And I've not ever felt that kind of drive. I never have. It's like when I first started performing, it's like I loved performing. Loved it. But I think about myself compared to, like, say, Poison Waters. Poison Waters, but listen, Poison and I started, in the same generation. And the reason that Poison is able to do what she does full time is because she has that drive and ambition to say, you need a person for your show, right? Blah, 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 and put herself out there and is always going. Whereas I'm all, oh, you asked me to do a show. Okay, I'll do it. I'm not the one who's going to be pushing to go, well, I need to do 10 shows this week. Never was. I was always waiting to be discovered. I watched way too many old Hollywood movies where they were discovered at Schwab's, sitting at the soda counter, and somebody came in and said, you need to be in my movie. And I'm like, whatever. That's what and so it was never... for me, that kind of drive, which I see in you and which I see in you.
The drive thing is weird, and it's not... I've always wanted to have drive.
Weird.
I've always wanted to be ambitious. And I feel like I have not yet achieved
that's
that.
So really interesting. So that's so interesting. I'm screaming. What?
Yeah, I feel like there's some ways that I should be applying myself better to achieve different things.
Go. I know.
Which is really, I know you're making those faces at me.
This has been fun. I'm leaving.
But I will say this, and part of it is that I'm very critical, and. Some of my writing friends and my musician friends, we've talked about this. Of the more experience you have, the more your ear changes, the more the way you view writing changes, and so things take longer or get harder because you know what's missing. No, this should sound like this, and it doesn't, or this should read like this, and it doesn't. Yeah. I look at you and I know, Vesta, I'm thinking about, one, the way that you perform, which we have talked about this, about how much that moves me and how powerful that is. And you talk about how, I just want to I'm going to hang out with my babies and my man. I'm just going to be at my house doing whatever. And yet I have seen the absolute, almost supernatural power you wield on stage when you are conveying a note of a song in a way that hits the frequency that touches everyone in that room. Shut your pie hole. So I've seen that, and I have seen the way that you love your children and your husband. I'm going to talk about your husband.
They're all right.
He's all right. He's fucking amazing. So excellence comes across in a lot of different ways, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And for each of us it's different, and for each of us the thing that makes us feel most who we are is different. Every once in a while, Kate and I will be crashed on the couch watching bad TV, which we do more frequently than you might imagine. And we'll have a Sunday where there's like nothing booked. And we'll look at each other and go, hey, there's nothing on the calendar. Wait, there's nothing. Some people do this all of the time, where they just hang out on Sundays and do nothing.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'm going to go do some yard work. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go run an errand. And that's the end of that. You know, it's just a different state, I think. And I don't know why it is that we're all kind of wired differently.
You want me to do something, you better give me a day's notice. You're not going to be like, want to go do this thing on the same day? Nope, I don't. You need to tell me yesterday. Thank you so much. Like, I don't have that.
My problem with that is if you ask me, like, hey, I want you to come do this thing, especially if it's like if you ask me to do a show. Yeah. I'm going to agree to it immediately and then regret it as soon as I hang up the phone. Or as soon as I, whatever. It's like if it was a text message, I'm going to be like, sure, I'll do your show. What did I just agree to?
Yep.
Right. And then all the way up to the moment it happens, I'm thinking, well, this is terrible. Why am I leaving? Why am I doing it? And then I'll do the thing. I'll have a great time and whatever. And then be like, shoo, I'm done with that. But it's always, for me, especially as I get older, it is do I still have the power that you were just talking about? Because, are young people going to look at me and go, who is this old lady? Why is she doing this? And no, I agree with you about the fact that I've always known that I have something special when it comes to entertaining. Because I watch other people and go, do you even know what your song is about? Mm-mm. Do you even feel any of the emotions in this song? It's like you're just up there moving your mouth and kind of smiling. And it's one of my favorite lines from Mildred Pierce is she's sitting there smirking her way through a piece that any 5-year-old with talent can do. And it's like, because they're just like, oh, I'm just going through the motions. And I've never felt like that. I was like, I feel whatever it is. And so, and I know that's kind of off track, but that's for me, that's kind of where that is. I always wonder if do I still have my talent? Do I still have whatever it is? So, and I know that I do.
You do. And that kind of comes back to what I was talking to earlier about reviews, right? And one of the things that I'm really trying to remember right now is if I reach them, if I touch someone, if they're into it, they're my audience. Yeah. If they don't, if they're ordering a drink or talking to their friends while you're performing, if somebody gives me a 2-star review or just keeps walking by my table, if I'm out selling books, whatever it is, then what I have to remind myself is they're not my audience. And it doesn't matter if I touch them, because we're not supposed to. They are touched by something else. Yeah. So I'm going to be back over here with these people who are moved by what I'm doing, who are engaged with what I'm doing, and those are your people.
I think that's probably the hardest thing to remember. Yeah. And it makes me think of having a conversation with one of my friends about not everyone's going to like you. Mm-hmm. So, and it's the same thing applies to what you do. Not everybody's going to like what you do. Not everybody's going to be interested in what you do. So, but that's okay. And I think that being okay with it is the more important part.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I know maybe you didn't watch it. Did you watch Schitt's Creek? Creek?
Yes, of course.
I watched some of Schitt's Creek.
Okay. Yes. So, David going to go take his driver's test, whatever, and he's nervous and afraid everyone's going to look at him. And he's going to fail, and he's so anxious. And his sister says, nobody cares. Nobody cares that you're driving. No one cares what you look like. No one cares about, because people will see you, be like, and then not think about you again. Do you know what I mean? Nobody cares what you do. I feel that, though, right? I feel, I'm anxious to go pick a thing, right? Do a thing. And then I'm like, who fucking cares? Nobody cares about me and you know what I mean? Like not like oh no one cares.
No, nobody cares
But
about
like
you in
no
that
one's
situation.
Yeah, people are indifferent. People just don't give a shit, and I think that is liberating as fuck.
Absolutely.
To be
It
like,
can be if we remember, and I'm saying this because it just kind of occurred to me now, that like, yeah, we're all invested in our own personal experiences,
Yeah.
and other people don't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
They're off on their own thing. But if we, in all of our own thing, are focused on connecting with those people that we're supposed to connect with, and then we're moving towards being our highest selves, then even though none of this other shit matters, but collectively, you know, wow, this just got really woo-woo.
well, just find your people, right? Just find your people.
But on to what you were saying, I wanted to go specifically about you. I remember going to see you sing at different places and being absolutely enthralled because I love watching you sing. And then I would be kind of seeing other people like not paying attention. And that would irritate me. I'm like, do you not, this person is singing and they're singing their own songs and they're giving their, and you're just over there like they're not there. But I know it happened all the time in my show too. People would be on their phone, they'd be chatting with their friends because they're there to have some ambiance of music. They're not there for the, you know, the show that's being put on.
Right.
They just happen to be there. There's a show going on. And I was like, it took me a while to be like, oh, right. Again, like you said, that's not your audience. The people who are sitting there talking back to you or, you know, listening and responding and doing whatever, those are your audience. You know, and I think that is the trick there, is knowing who's your audience. And clearly, I think at this point in your writing, you've figured out kind of who your audience is.
Nope, still working that out. It's kind of interesting right now, the reviews that are popping. So for the first book, many of the early reviews were people that I knew that either had gotten the press release from my publisher or folks that I had reached out to personally. So when reviews are posted or people are on social media talking about it, I was like, okay, that's so-and-so. For this book, it's a completely different trajectory. Like I said, it's been out for about 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Most of the reviews are people I have no idea who they are. People who are talking about the book are like, I don't even know how they found out about it. And it's been in the top, it's gone back and forth from being in the top 5 to the top 25 in queer sci-fi bestsellers on Amazon.
Oh my god.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome and kind of a trip. Briefly hit number 1. What? And I found out by accident. So I think I'm starting to find those people. I don't know who they are yet, and I'm not sure that I'm engaged in the conversation with them yet. I think that's going to take some time.
Right.
But they're out there, and we're just kind of starting to build that relationship. So it's kind of weird for me.
But I think though, if you continue just being you and speaking in your voice and your stories to tell, you're obviously going to find the people who respond to that.
I hope so.
Well,
I hope so.
So I have one question, and then I know we're all
we got to wrap it up.
What's next for you?
I'm working on the sequel to Consecrated Ground.
Perfect.
Right now.
Awesome. That's cool.
So I'm really, really into it, and I've been joking a lot about how my previous catchphrase was kind of I write women-loving women fiction, most likely in the future, probably in space.
Love that.
Now it's angst first, happily ever after later.
Love that.
So I'm really trying to find some ways to make Joan and Lee's lives very, very difficult right now, while affirming their love for one another.
Right. When they need a little entertainment, have them go see a show starring this amazing fat woman who performs it. You know, just write it in your book somewhere.
That would be really awesome, because part of the novel takes place in what I've called Black Rose City. So for folks who have not read the novel, it takes place for the most part in rural Oregon, in a small town I made up called Calvert, Oregon, which is really bizarrely close to Newburgh and Woodville.
Oh God!
I'm gonna go home and burn my copy now.
All right. So the idea was this is takes place down there, and then in Portland, Portland has actually been divided into 2 territories. One most of Portland is protected, if you will, by the Portland Coven of Witches. It's a super coven, which means like 13 of 13 kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then there's vampire territory where they have sort of a tense truce. And vampire territory is called Black Rose City, which you'll appreciate because I named it after that Cher song, that Cher album, Black Rose, from back in the 80s.
Right.
We'll talk about that some other time. So everything that is like, and I'm trying to figure out where the dividing line is, but all of St. John's is Black Rose City, and I'm trying to give it part of industrial Northwest. So I just need to figure out how far into Northwest that goes, and if it happens to cross Broadway and Cooch. And if it does,
there's a little nightclub there,
you know,
which sadly closed 7 years ago.
Are they ever going to open that place?
Allegedly.
I have a funny story about that, but that'll have to be off air because it's whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
listen, but we do have to wrap up. So I want you to tell people
Where they can find
where
you.
they can find you.
All the socials, Virginia Black Rights on Blue Sky and Facebook and Insta, and I think I'm Virginia BLK 517 on Twitter.
It's called X now.
It's and I understand this is controversial. That is the only thing that I will ever dead name. So it's on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's on Twitter.
In this economy, you're going to dead name it?
Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Big time.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow.
But you can find out what's going on also by getting on my mailing list over at Virginia Black Rights.
Perfect.
And considering the fluidity and dangers of social media, if you want to know what's going on, getting on my mailing list is probably a smart move.
Probably. And where can people buy your books?
You can buy my books directly from Bywater Books at bywaterbooks.com, or you can get it anywhere. It's on all of the all of your normal places: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, online.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I know. I'm very excited for more.
I know.
Again, I just need to be featured in one of them.
Yeah. And then she'll be really interested.
Well, because if it's about me,
Yeah. She'll have to read
That
it.
tracks.
And then critique.
doesn't it though?
And then be like, this is wrong, change it. Thank you so much.
So today our special guest.
Our gayest.
Suddenly I'm from Petticoat Junction.
Carlton? I'm not sure.
Virginia Black, author. You're going to buy her books because she's amazing and awesome. You will love her. And for those of you who listen in other places, you can always do the Amazon. You can do whatever. Buy the books.
Buy them.
Buy them.
Yeah.
And as for us, we'll be back next week like we are every week.
Yep.
And you can find us on all of the podcasting apps.
Yeah.
Or not find us. It's up to you.
Yeah, and you can email us.
Yeah, and if you have questions or comments, and if you have questions
Concerns.
for Virginia Black, you can send them to us, and we can reach out and maybe do this again, whatever. But send them to itwouldseemasThough@gmail.com.
That's all.
Is that everything?
Yeah, I'll see you later.
All right.
Bye. Bye. I'm waiting for the outro.
Bye.
It would seem as though